Okay, in this video we will go through the third sample scene of the GPU ECS Animation Baker. In this sample scene we featured this blue character called character 19, which we go to the original prefab. Has 5 animations defined on it, and you see here in the animator those 5 animations, and they're all dances that the character knows, and these dances are all defined here. They all have their own animation ID, and they're referring to the proper animator state names when the proper animation files. The enumeration file is also being generated. We can actually see that in the baked assets. Now if you look here, these are the animation IDs that were defined, and this is always prefixed animation IDs with the name as defined here. Then you have the LOD configuration, but the important part here is all these different animations. Now if we look at the scene, we see that the GPU ECS Animator is already in the subscene, so that's already done. There's nothing new there. So what we have here though is the transition speed scroll bar, which will give us the value of the transition speed, and then those 5 buttons that will do the transition. And you'll see on each of those buttons is a transition script, and with a reference to the scroll bar that has the value of the transition speed, and each button will call the transition function of this transition script. You will see if I select them all, they're all calling the transition function, each with a different animation ID. And this is where the enum does its work. Instead of just filling in a number here, we can actually just select it as a readable dance name. So let's have a look at this transition script. So here we have our reference to our transition speed scroll bar and the actual reference to the enum. So what needs to happen if we click on this button? We need to get the entity manager. We need to find all the GPU ECS Animator control component entities. There's in this case going to be only one, but if I would double up, it would do it with all of them. And then for each of these entities, we can basically get the GPU ECS Animator aspects of the entity and call the run animation function on it. And in this case, we only need to provide it with the animation ID, converted to an int, and the transition speed. There are other optional parameters, which in this case we can just leave to their defaults. Like the blend factor, which doesn't apply here. Speed factor, we're not going to speed it up or slow it down, and we're going to start it at 0. And just doing that will actually do the transitions. So if we press on play here, you will see that with the transition speed all the way to 0, it will just instantly switch from one dance to the other. And with the transition speed very high, it will actually take a second to transition. It's also important to note here that these transitions they happen through blending via interpolation of the vertex positions between the two poses, which is not actually the best way to do it, but is the only way to do it within the context of GPU ECS animation. And that results in a slight distortion, because the normal way to do this would be to do it through the angles of the bone structure, to interpolate between those. But because that information is not available in the shader, we simply interpolate between vertex positions. Now this is fine for short blends like this, where you don't really see this distortion, and it's also going to be fine for small differences in poses, which will be important for the fourth sample. So that's it for transitions.